Welcome back to another deep dive. Today we're looking at a really pivotal chapter in the Hebrew Bible, 2 Samuel chapter 7.
Absolutely. A crucial one.
Yeah, our goal is to unpack the key moments, the promises made, and some insights that might surprise you. Let's get straight into it.
Sounds good. So this chapter, it opens with King David. Well, he's finally got some peace.
Right, after all the conflict.
Exactly. He's settled in his palace, the text says, and crucially, the Lord had given him rest from all his surrounding enemies.
You can almost feel the exhale, can't you? Settled, quiet.
For sure. And he's in this, pretty nice place, a palace of cedar, it's called.
Fancy stuff for the time.
Definitely. And as he's there, comfortable, he looks around and notices something. He says essentially, look at me, I'm in this cedar palace.
But the Ark of God, it's still just in a tent.
Exactly, that contrast. His own permanence versus the temporary setup for the ark, representing God's presence, it clearly strikes him.
And it leads him to want to do something about it.
It does. He gets this idea, this desire. He wants to build a proper house for God, something permanent, something grand.
Makes sense from his perspective. Honor God, give the Ark a fitting home.
So he goes to Nathan the prophet, his go-to guy for spiritual matters.
And Nathan's first reaction.
Seems totally positive. He tells David basically, whatever you're thinking, go ahead, do it. The Lord is with you.
Green light, right. Good intention, prophet approves, God's on board. Seems simple.
It seems simple, but that's where the story takes its first big turn.
Ah, okay, what happens?
The very next verse says, but that night the word of the Lord came to Nathan.
Ah, so Nathan spoke, but then God spoke.
Precisely. It signals that Nathan's human wisdom, even as a prophet, wasn't the full picture. God had something else to say.
Okay, so God weighs in directly. What's the divine take on David's temple building project? It's not quite the enthusiastic yes Nathan gave, I'm guessing.
No, not exactly. God starts by, well, asking a question through Nathan, a really pointed question aimed at David.
Which is?
Are you the one to build me a house to dwell in?
Ooh, that hits differently. It's not don't do it, but more like, hold on, whose idea is this really?
Exactly. It shifts the focus immediately from David's initiative to God's sovereignty. Who gets to decide when and how God gets a permanent house?
And God backs this up by talking about his own history.
Where he does.
Yeah.
He reminds David, through Nathan, look, I haven't lived in a permanent house since I brought Israel out of Egypt.
He's been mobile.
Right. I've been moving from place to place with a tent as my dwelling. He emphasizes the journey. His presence with them in the tabernacle, the tent, that was the point then.
So the tent wasn't a second best option. It was appropriate for that time.
That's the sense. And he drives it home with another question.
What's that?
He asks essentially, did I ever complain about the tent? Did I ever ask any of the previous leaders, the judges, the shepherds of Israel, hey, why haven't you built me a nice cedar house?
And the implied answer is?
A clear no. Building a temple wasn't some outstanding task on God's divine to-do list that David just happened to stumble upon.
Okay, so David's idea, maybe coming from a good place, wasn't actually aligned with God's current plan or priority.
Seems that way. But crucially, God doesn't just shut David down and leave it there. The conversation pivots dramatically.
Oh, so?
God shifts from correcting David's plan for God to revealing his own incredible plan for David.
Ah, okay. This is where it gets really interesting.
Yes. God starts by reminding David where he came from.
The shepherd boy narrative.
Exactly. I took you from the pasture, from following the flock, to be ruler over my people Israel. A powerful reminder. Your position, David, is my doing.
Not something you achieve solely on your own.
And God reinforces this by saying, I've been with you everywhere you've gone. I cut off your enemies. Basically, the peace you're enjoying now, the Cedar Palace. That's thanks to me.
Laying the foundation for what comes next.
Precisely. And then come these huge promises for David himself, first, about his reputation.
What does God promise him?
Now I will make your name great, like the names of the greatest men on earth. Just think about that. From shepherd to a legendary name.
That's massive. Not based on a building, but on God's declaration.
And the promise broadens. It's not just about David's personal fame. It extends to the people, to Israel.
He promises them security.
Yes, a secure place, a home of their own, free from the kind of oppression they'd faced before. Rest for the people, mirroring the rest God had given David from his enemies.
Okay, security for Israel, a great name for David. But there's a central piece here, isn't there, about the house?
Yes,
Yeah.
This is the absolute core of it. God declares through Nathan, the Lord declares to you that the Lord himself will establish a house for you.
Whoa. So David wants to build God a house.
And God says, no, David, I'm going to build you a house.
Obviously not a literal house of cedar for David to live in.
Right. This is where house takes on a totally different meaning. It's about dynasty, legacy, kingdom.
So let's unpack that house.
Mm-hmm.
What are the specifics of God's promise to build this house for David?
It focuses squarely on the future, on David's lineage. God says, basically, when you die, I will raise up your offspring after you, one from your own body, and I will establish his kingdom.
So first promise is a successor, a son.
Yes. And interestingly, this son is the one who will actually get to build the physical temple David wanted to build.
Ah, okay. So the text says,
He is the one who will build a house for my name. This clearly points to Solomon, right? But notice how even the temple's construction is framed. It's part of God's plan for David's line, fulfilled by his son.
so David doesn't build it, but his son does, as part of God's promise to David.
Exactly. But the promise doesn't stop with Solomon. This is where it goes into, well, the stratosphere.
Absolutely.
The word forever. It keeps appearing. God says he will establish the son's kingdom. Then, talking about David's legacy through this line, I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. And again, your house and your kingdom will endure forever before me. Your throne will be established forever.
Forever, forever, forever. 3 times. That's not
Yeah.
normal for ancient kingdoms. They rise and fall.
Absolutely not normal. This is a promise of permanence and enduring dynasty and throne unlike any other. It's a divine guarantee.
And there's that line about the father-son relationship, too.
Yes, I will be his father and he will be my son. It speaks to a unique covenantal bond between God and the Davidic king.
But it's not unconditional approval, right? There's a mention of discipline.
Very important point. God anticipates failings. He says, if this son, this offspring does wrong, I will punish him with the rod of men, with floggings inflicted by men.
Meaning, earthly consequences, defeat, suffering, the kinds of things kings experienced.
That seems to be the implication, real-world consequences for sin. But, and this is crucial, that discipline is contrasted immediately with God's commitment to the promise itself.
Yeah.
God says, but my love, or my steadfast love, my hesed, will never be taken away from him as I took it away from Saul.
The comparison with Saul is key. Saul's dynasty was cut off.
Exactly. God is saying, your descendants might mess up, and they'll face consequences. But unlike Saul, I won't revoke the fundamental promise. The house, the throne, the covenant with your line that remains secure, my loving commitment endures.
So individual kings might fail, but the dynasty promised to David is eternally secured by God.
That's the core of the Davidic covenant laid out here.
Okay, so Nathan relays all of this complex, mind-bending message. David wanted to build a house. God says, no, I'm building you an eternal house. How does David even process this?
It's profound. The text says David went in and sat before the Lord. He doesn't argue. He doesn't question in a demanding way. He prays.
And that prayer itself is remarkable, isn't it?
It really is. It starts with just sheer humility and awe.
Yeah. Who am I, O sovereign Lord, and what is my family that you have brought me this far?
He's just been handed this unbelievable promise of an eternal kingdom, and his first thought is his own unworthiness, his humble origins.
And he's amazed by the future aspect of it all.
Completely. He calls it this great thing God has done, and he's stunned that God has spoken about the future of the house of your servant. He even asks sort of rhetorically, is this your usual way of dealing with humans, Lord? Like, this is extraordinary grace.
He doesn't take any credit for it, does he? Not even for the initial good idea.
Not at all. He explicitly says, for the sake of your word and according to your will, you have done this great thing. It's all God's initiative, God's purpose.
And then he just erupts in praise.
Beautiful praise. How great you are. There's no one like you. No God but you. He connects God's promise to him back to God's history with Israel redeeming them, making a name for himself. He sees his personal story as part of that bigger divine narrative.
And then he asks God to basically follow through.
Yes, but notice how he asks. It's not demanding proof. It's more like a humble plea based on God's own character and word. Now, Lord God, keep forever the promise, do as you promised.
And why does he want God to keep the promise?
This is key, so that your name will be great forever. David gets it. The endurance of his house isn't ultimately about his glory, but about magnifying God's faithfulness and greatness through history.
Wow. And he finishes by just resting in God's reliability.
Absolutely. Your words are trustworthy, and you've promised these good things. His final request is simply for God's blessing on this house, this dynasty, because God himself has spoken it. Total trust in God's promise.
So looking back at the whole chapter, we really see these two ideas of a house playing off each other.
Definitely. David's idea, a physical house, a temple built for God, a human project, well-intentioned perhaps, but not God's immediate priority.
And then God's counterproposal.
God's promise, an enduring house, a dynasty, a kingdom, a legacy built for David, a divine project rooted in God's sovereign plan and grace.
It really throws human plans versus divine plans into sharp relief, doesn't it? David's good idea is met with something else, something bigger.
Much bigger. It's not just a no to David's plan, but a yes to something far more profound that David hadn't even conceived of. It originates entirely with God.
And that forever theme just resonates throughout. The permanence of this God-established house for David. It really makes you think about what true legacy means. Is it the structures we try to build, or is it something established for us by something or someone greater?
That's a powerful question emerging from the text. The source of endurance, according to this chapter, is divine promise, not human effort alone.
So here's a final thought for you to consider. In this chapter, God takes David's sincere desire to build a house for him, and he redirects it, transforms it into this astonishing promise to build an eternal house for David. What might it mean in our own lives when our heartfelt plans, our best intentions, are met not just with a simple yes or no, but perhaps with a completely different, maybe even grander vision that seems to come from beyond ourselves?